everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is the Darklight Emissary, and I just want to start off this video with a deep thank you to all of you. Whether you've been here for a year with me, or you just found me on that recent video where apparently the Warp and the Emperor were looking out for me and sent out the Astronomicon beacon to all of you, and you showed up, so I appreciate all your support. At the beginning of this video, I just want to put a notation here that if you look in the description, there is going to be a link to Patreon. Now, this is not really meant to make money, it's more for a filter right now to my Discord. So if you want to join the Discord, I've had one for a little while that is 40k lore based, and you can join it for $1 on the Patreon. I also plan to do like maybe roundtable discussions with you on different tiers of membership. You know, you can pay for that sort of invitation to that sort of thing. Maybe members only live discussions of lore and questions and discussion, podcast type stuff, that sort of thing. There's a lot of ideas that I have in my head, and then I would love to hear your ideas as well, along with I will read out your name as well as a contributor, as a donator to this channel and its success. And then your name will also start appearing at the end of videos. I'm going to start putting in just names of people that want to be named as contributors to this channel's success. And I'll talk a little bit more towards the end of this video about some of this stuff as well, in some detail also. And you can join it for $1 on the Patreon. So there will be a link in the description. Come join that if you'd like. I'd hope to see you there and want to discuss things with you. And once again, thank you everyone so much. Even if you don't ever join the Discord and you just consume the video content, it's been really great to see this level of support and the kind comments and the critical feedback. I need that as well. I thank all of you. Now to get into this video is going to be on the age of technology, or the dark age of technology, or the golden age, and the horrors and mysteries of this era. So the dark age of technology is one of the most important eras of the Warhammer 40k universe. If you don't know anything about it, essentially the Dark Age of technology is where humanity reached its pinnacle technologically. This is the closest humanity ever got to basically a level like in a novel series like The Culture, although never quite that level, but approaching technological levels that could rival the Eldari, and maybe not the Necrons yet, but they were probably fast approaching some kind of equivalency to that as well. They could certainly hold their own, arguably better back then against Necrons than now, I would say. This era was speculated to begin around the 18th millennium of mankind, so a good, 16,000 more years from now, if we were to calculate it. And one of the things that was really important to humanity here was the invention of the warp drive during this era. And that's where humanity basically exploded, both technologically and expansion-wise throughout the galaxy. And humanity seemed mostly united governmentally. It seemed like it was a loose confederation of different cultures and governments all working together to kind of expand human reach throughout the stars. During this time, humanity did run into different xenospecies like the orcs for the first time, the Eldari, and then probably numerous other species that we have seen either during the Great Crusade or elsewhere, and many that we don't know about. And we traded and probably had alliances with them, things of that nature. So for a time, humanity prospered here. But this did not last. The main turning point in this era was when the AI that humanity created, which there were several different types of AI, I believe, at different levels created, started rebelling against both humanity and even each other. I did read in a couple of lore posts just across Reddit and places that apparently there is speculation that several of the AI groups during this period of time were fighting each other, and that humanity was kind of on the sideline of that war, trying to stop all of it from happening. But just like many details of this era, this is not, solid set in stone stuff. We have 0 novels set in this era. We have real 0, actual background lore for the Dark Age, really. We have really bits of small text kind of scattered over the last 20 plus years, kind of fleshing out different bits of it. We see little bits of the technology show up in the 40k era, but not much. But it hints at the power of this era. And another important development in this era, along with the warp drive, is the creation of the Navigator gene mutant that was used to help navigate the stars better through the warp. They have a third eye mutation that lets them see the tide, so to speak. Basically see the warp as an ocean to go across. This allowed for longer warp jumps, things like that. And through this, humanity was, poised to be able to take over the galaxy in a large way, along with making alliances with other forces throughout the galaxy. It seems like humanity was less completely on a conquering spree and more of like willing to make alliances with people and other species, things like that. And I think a lot of species, knew not to mess with humanity at that point. Their technological prowess is probably pretty apparent to any species intelligent enough, to view humanity at that time. And so we have this AI war with the Men of Gold and the Men of Stone fighting each other, and human factions either siding with both of these factions, fighting each other. All the alliances are unknown, really. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time here speculating on what these conflicts could have looked like, because really, this is going to be fun to kind of like imagine what these wars could have been like, and how they completely tore apart the human empires and, human civilization at this point in time. So one of the inventions that happened, I guess, near the end of this war, but I speculate that's possible, it has deeper roots than the Age of Strife, is the creation of Titans. Now, Titans are something we know well in Warhammer 40k, giant bipedal war machines that the Cult Mechanicus uses to great effect in wars on the behalf of the Imperium to break apart fortresses and other hard targets, enemy Titans, all of the above. But I have to imagine there was possibly some equivalent Titan type of bipedal war machine during these civil wars with the AI, and they were probably controlled by the AI forces in large formations across planets. And then you have to imagine that supporting them in space was probably entire fleets of Dark Age technology ships, also being commanded by rivaling AI forces. So imagine ships that have weapons like black hole shooting weapons or time dilation weapons. Swarms of nanite swarms that probably devoured hulls of ships. Fighter craft being controlled by them. Just, you can kind of imagine technologically what you want, and it probably happened during this age of them fighting each other. So imagine multiple legions of Titans and ships being piloted by no one other than AI controlling them in very large formations. Like a Titan Legion today is made up of around 50 engines per Titan Legion usually. And imagine during this era, Titan Legions being much bigger, not controlled by humans, and possibly very easy to manufacture by these AI in whatever went for manufactories back then. And same goes for the ships as well. I kind of have in my mind something like Unto Supreme Commander, which, if you're not familiar with that RTS from a decade plus ago, the concept there was that human technology got to a point where human commanders basically were able to take mass and energy and fabricate whatever they wanted for war against each other. And there would be one human commander on the battlefield, but he would be controlling essentially an AI force of, thousands of just AI 3D printed machines, essentially fabricated in, only like 20 to 30 minutes on a battlefield. You suddenly have hundreds of, combat bots and other machines ready to go. And I can only imagine that it's the same case here, where the AI were probably furiously printing out, just Titan type biped war machines after Titan biped war machines, other supporting machines, just all kinds, and probably all different kinds of formats. Now, what exactly ended this war between the AIs is not completely certain, but we know there was a coalition of humans along with xenospecies, and they helped bring about an end to this conflict somehow. It's possible that the AIs simply destroyed each other mostly, and then humanity came in and, put a bullet, so to speak, through the, whatever went for the AI central processing or, hive mind, however it was set up. And then also during this era, kind of going back to my 3D printing analogy, this is where STCs were in, huge use, where an STC basically allows you to build whatever you want from it, similar to the Supreme Commander example. That's basically what STC does, but more on like a multi-purpose level, where you can print equipment, tools, all kinds of stuff that you want from the STC, but up to and including combat stuff as well. And in fact, in one of the older novels now for the Grey Knights, Dark Adeptus, the Grey Knights end up on a corrupted forge world of the Mechanicus, and they stumble upon an STC Titan. It is speculated that this Titan was basically the one where all other Titans were derived off of, and this Titan was able to basically regenerate its armor when it was hit by enemies. It had a bunch of improvements over any current existing Titan, and so I imagine there was more than just this one during the Dark Age era and the wars that happened there. And so this is all just a bit of setup for you to kind of get the grasp of the importance of this era and how all this technology could obviously be turned in on itself into horrible and very scary ways. And so we'll talk about some of that technology now, other than just the simple war machines. Now, some of what we know about this era comes from a direct source, so to speak, from someone who was in that era, and that is Olanius Person, who you can read about in Horus Heresy novels, and he was a former friend of the Emperor of Mankind as well, who was also present during that era. And just as a very quick aside, I'm not going to get into it here, but we have no idea what the Emperor was doing during this period of time, really. The closest thing we know he did was go to a planet called Molech, and other than that, we do not really know what the Emperor was up to, what Malcador was up to, anyone during this era. But we do get some personal musings from Olanius, speculating and kind of just ruminating back on the Dark Age of technology. He's on a world at this point that is actually during kind of like the Age of Strife time after the Dark Age. He's actually in that era at the time, because during this period of time, he has the ability to travel through warp tears, essentially, and some of the warp tears he goes through allows him to travel forward and backward in time, although it's not him choosing the timeline. He just ends up there. And so he finds himself on a world that there's a human civilization on the world, but everyone that lives on this world is currently hooked up into basically a Matrix type environment. There's no communication with them. They're all just living in a digital universe, essentially, on this world. And part of the reason why Olanius is on this world, and he's actually stuck here for a little while, for quite a long time, is because there's a giant pit near this city, or through the city, essentially. Just a giant dig out, going way deep, just cut from the city. And apparently this is created by a certain Dark Age technology weapon called a mechanivore. So imagine just a gigantic AI-controlled machine that could lift entire continents, rip open entire chasms through the crust of the planet they're attacking, as well as, rip all the way down to the core if need be. And then not only do they take the physical chunk of the land that they're eating, but they will even absorb the space-time in that area as some form of data that they convert into their system. So this pit represented that. And not only that, but the warp that is localized to that same physical point was also devoured. So there was a machine capable of devouring other dimensions at the same time as the physical dimension. So who knows what else kind of damage they could do. But it could essentially eat parts of the warp as well. So Olanius couldn't travel through the warp in that area because the warp didn't exist in that specific point. So that's just devastating enough on its own. So imagine you not only Exterminatus a planet, but in its place is also a void in the warp as well. You're basically destroying several realities all at once. That's the kind of level of tech that humanity was playing with back then. Another weapon that Olanius muses on is something known as a sun snuffer. All it says about that is that the sun snuffer uncoils itself into structures larger than the ring of Saturn, and that they were used to devour stars, as their name suggests, or snuff them out, or otherwise destroy stars in a solar system. And then, apparently, one of the most common weapons used during that time was something known as an omniphage. And this was essentially nanomachines that would be deployed in a cloud type form, speculatively, and it would scour a world completely of everything biological it could consume, and maybe not biological as well. It probably broke down everything. And, I want you to think about that for a second. In the current era, one of the most devastating weapons that humanity has still in its armories is the Life Eater virus. As a form of Exterminatus it can call upon. The Life Eater virus can devour all biological matter on a world and basically kill everything on it. But it doesn't break down structures or metal or anything like that. I have a feeling these omniphages broke down every single thing. So imagine something even worse than the Life Eater on a macro scale. In a sense, it's possible that this, in combination with mechanivores, basically did the same sort of thing that Tyranids are doing now, basically leaving planets completely barren of life and anything to use afterwards. And that is some of the most knowledge we have about weaponry deployed during that time. The sky's the limit for any speculation you can make on other weapons that we aren't told about, but we see vestiges of during the 40k era. There are still important remnants of the Dark Age during the 40k era, such as like giant fortresses in space. Like imagine giant fortress space stations, bastions essentially, that the Imperium runs, the core of which often is some kind of form of Dark Age of technology space station that the current era of humans have built around. And this was called to specific attention in one of the latest books that I've read in the current era, which is the book Plague Wars. And in this book, there is a space station being used by the Ultramarines to help fight the warriors of Typhus and Mortarion on a world that they're trying to kick them off of. And it talks about how, huge this station is, but then at its core, there is Dark Age of technology era machines and technology built into the alloys. Like, there's basically alloys so perfect built into the central core of the structure that they're unsure in the current era how that kind of perfection in an alloy could even be created. And then also added to this inner core of this, gigantic space fortress is inbuilt carvings of symbols meant to ward off warp entities as well. So it shows that during the Dark Age and near the end of it, when the Age of Strife started and demons started encroaching on real space and other warp entities, that humans at the time started putting into their structures symbols that were known to ward off warp entities. So that's also an interesting point for this structure. So just goes to show that there's still bits and pieces of it all the way up to the 40k era. And it often causes a lot of confusion and consternation for current humans because they are both usually superstitious of any technology at this level, and it's downright heretical to certain factions of the current Imperium of Man as well to even dabble in Dark Age tech sometimes. And then we have a couple other examples of technology from that era that are really awesome in a couple short stories and longer novels. One of the short stories that I remember reading about was a AI-controlled Dark Age ship along with some human crew it had, and they arrived back to real space from, I think, being trapped in the warp for a long time in the 40k era, and they approached the human world, and the human crew got killed by the people on that world because they were superstitious about them. And apparently a group of space marines and other troops boarded this vessel, and when they did, the AI controlling the ship was actually able to hack into the power armor of the Space Marines and lock them down and start killing them, and essentially started lecturing this version of humanity for being so backwards. It was also basically freezing any Mechanicus forces with this force, and it just started picking them off and lecturing them as it was destroying them, any machine parts on them. Of interesting note here, apparently this ship first arrived hundreds of thousands of years in the future and saw a version of the galaxy where Chaos had won, apparently, so they left again and ended up in 40k. And the Inquisition, being the Inquisition, just saw them as heretics and killed them. And then the AI then got angry with them. And this ship that they were using, that this Dark Age of technology era crew was using, was not a combat vessel. It was some kind of cargo vessel. But not only did it take control of all the mechanical forces that the Imperium sent aboard in any shape or form that had any rudimentary systems in it, but then it broke free of the cordon that the Imperial fleet had and basically destroyed several of the ships, crippled a bunch more with one single weapon on this ship. And we know that this AI expressed the desire to leave the galaxy after this point in time, and beyond that we don't know much about this one. But it's one of our only examples of a Dark Age technology ship that we see in 40k. One of the other great examples, and I'm going to link a video right here to a previous video about 5 of the biggest ships in the 40k universe that I did a while ago, and that's going to be the ever-famous Speranza. This is considered a Arch Mechanicus of the Mechanicum, but it's not like other Arch Mechanicus. Most Arch Mechanicus ships are huge, but the Speranza is even bigger. This thing's the size of like a planetary continent, and when it was even discovered, it was actually embedded in a forge world. And the Magos that discovered it, worked to revive it and, get it into space, but in doing so, it actually destroyed the forge world, essentially, to get it lifted off and out into space. It was so big. This ship was so big that you had room for entire formations of soldiers to practice mock battles, essentially, with Titan support, like a huge area inside of this ship. And speaking to that point, at one point, a Titan accidentally discharged a plasma weapon that went through like several walls of this ship, and the ship just continued on like it was nothing. Like it didn't devastate or destroy the ship at all. I'm sure the damage was not desired or not good, but the ship was still fully functional after that incident. And it was discovered that at the heart of this ship is another AI from the Golden Age. And this AI was not quite as hostile as the last one, and actually communed with the Magos in charge and basically said, I'll help you in this fight that you're currently fighting. Because at this point in time, the Speranza was currently fighting some Eldari ships. And so what the ship did was reveal that it had some absolutely bonkers weaponry on board. And so out of like a hidden hard point of the hull came a cannon. Not just some ordinary macro cannon of some kind. This thing fired a black hole, and so it could fire small singularities. Along with this, there was some kind of time dilation weapon aboard the Speranza as well. So utilizing these two weapons, essentially what the Speranza did was it would target a Eldari vessel, and it would pull it back in time a couple seconds with the time weapon, and then fire a singularity at it and rip it to pieces, essentially. So that's what two weapons could do on this ship. And there is assumedly more weapons that it didn't even choose to use for this conflict. And then after this happened, the AI went dormant again and erased any memory of itself from the Magos' mind. So, no one knows that this AI exists within the heart of the Speranza, and it seems content to let humanity use it for now, for who knows what motives it has. And again, just to emphasize the size of this vessel, when that Eldari fleet was destroyed, several of the Eldari members of that fleet actually were able to get aboard the Speranza, and they hid in the Speranza. So you had a group of striking scorpions and a couple other Eldari hiding out in like the depths of this ship, and it's so big that they couldn't just hunt them down, and they couldn't find them. So this is possibly one of the absolute biggest ships in the entire setting. To call it a ship, it's more like a mobile station of some kind. A mobile factory. Like it's a ship is a misnomer, really. Like this thing is probably bigger than the Phalanx. It's probably bigger than, it is bigger than any Glorianas if it's bigger than the Phalanx. It's massive. And so we kind of come to the end of this one. Again, I'm not going to try to make these super long. I could speculate forever on this subject, but I am going to end this video, so to speak, with some speculations now about some mysteries and what I hope we see more of from this era, possibly in the future. And also just what possibly happened during that era as well. So one speculation I've heard, and I share this speculation, is I do wonder if several groups of humanity ever left aboard, gigantic vessels like the Speranza or something like unto it to head to other galaxies. I wonder if they were able to find a way to leave the galaxy, and it's not really known. I think it's speculated and assumed that the warp is not just local to the galaxy, but there's also no proof necessarily of that, really. The closest I think we come to any sort of actual proof of this is in the Godblight novel, where some of the Nurglite demons are talking about traveling to other galaxies or having their eyes set on other galaxies along with their gods. But how that exactly connects with everything else, who knows? But anyway, I kind of digress here. My point is that, at least by warp travel, we have no proof of anyone traveling or showing up or arriving in any other galaxies. And then during the Dark Age was some of the best technology used, in coupling with probably some of the best warp drives used on these Dark Age ships. And if they were capable of creating something the size of the Speranza, then they probably built things bigger than that. And I can imagine some kind of gigantic hybrid warship colony ship being sent out into the in-between places of the galaxy to try to search out other places for human civilizations. These could be some sort of exiles or, people that just did not want to be part of human civilization, saw the writing on the wall, that sort of thing. Sort of how like Eldari live on craft worlds, that sort of thing. Humanity might have had their version of a craft world that we just don't know about. And then on a completely different scale, I do wonder if there is hidden Dark Age of technology societies within the current era. Basically imagine like stealth solar systems. I have to imagine that during the Dark Age they had the ability to cloak entire solar systems from being detectable and possibly formed enclaves like that. And I imagine some societies battening down the hatches in that way during Old Night and during the resurgence of warp storms and things that really saw the complete collapse of the human empire at that point. There's no proof of this is my pure speculation on it, but I have to imagine maybe that exists to some degree somewhere, possibly in areas like the Veiled regions, the Halo stars, along the galactic rims, things like that. I mean, there could be something pretty close to Terra if it's a completely cloaked solar system of some kind. The current version of the Imperium of Mankind would have no clue how to even start searching for something like that. And so just imagine some highly advanced group of humans that have 10,000 plus more years of technological advancement possibly, and they are just essentially kind of watching and observing, and who knows what their motives could be. We just would have no clue. But there is no proof of this, it's just purely my assumption. I mentioned in one of my previous videos it would be really funny for the Imperium of Man to find some human civilization, stumble upon them somehow, and they are like, we're the Imperium, join us in the God Emperor's light, and they say no, and so they're like, fine, we're gonna come destroy all of you, and then they just like deploy one battleship that just dumpsters an entire like assault fleet of the Imperium. I would love to see something like that. That would be really great. And then really the final thing I want to bring up is there is at least one Man of Iron still kicking around, and his name is UR-025, and he has survived since the Dark Age by just faking to be a robot for the Mechanicum. So if just this one thinking machine can fake being around, I can imagine entire societies doing something similar in a more esoteric way with like technology, essentially. But then you have to wonder if Malkador and the Emperor knew that that was a possibility. I mean, maybe they would have tried to find those sorts of societies during the Great Crusade if that was a threat that they knew existed, but maybe even they knew it would be really hard to find those. And they had plenty of other problems to deal with anyways, as we know at this point. Thirsting gods in an alternate dimension that want to devour you and your civilization tend to distract you from other issues, I imagine. And so that is really it for this video. So again, thank all of you so much for being here. If this is your first time on a video, I welcome you. And if you have been here for a little bit now, I thank you as well and welcome you back to this video. And so please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. And let's keep pushing this community up and growing it. I'm looking forward to mostly building a community with each of you. Less so, just to make a successful YouTube channel. I wanted a community of 40k lore enthusiasts where we could all learn and grow with each other and just have fun with it. So I welcome you as part of that. And again, if you are still here at the end of this video, linked in the description will be a Patreon link, which will take you to a page there for a link to Discord if you choose to spend $1 there for that. And I hope to see you there if you would like to do that here today. And then along with putting the Discord link in there, I'm going to start putting names of donators at the ends of videos as well. And I'll even name them until the names get too big if that ever happens for this channel. I'm not going to be presumptive that that's ever going to happen, but for now at least, I'll read your name out as a contributor here to this community. And then one other idea I have for memberships on Patreon that you can give feedback in the comments on as an idea is if I end up doing higher tiers, maybe one of them could be possible, roundtable discussions for live streams of lore that you want to bring questions to and just have a discussion with for everyone else to listen in on and discuss in the chat. I really want to build a collaborative discussion-based community around everything. And the money is really so there's a gate for actual interest for those of you that are actually interested and to reward interest and loyalty to this channel. So that's really where I'm at for ideas right now on that sort of thing. As always, thanks a lot for the time you've spent on this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day, have a great week coming up here, and have a great rest of your year, and I will see you in that next video. Talk to you soon. Thank you.